Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to be able to welcome James and Jennifer Evans to Candid Conversations. I consider James and Jen to be two of animal welfare's most caring and compassionate advocates in our field today. James Evans started CARE, and CARE is probably one of the few acronyms that I really love because of what it stands for. Companions and Animals for Reform and Equity. It's a groundbreaking organization that keeps pets and people together, and it creates a safe space for BIPOC animal advocates and leaders. And as partner in life and with CARE, Jennifer Evans is a gifted art director and project organizer. We spoke with Jennifer and James last month about their experiences facing personal biases and how CARE was created. Let's have a look, and then we'll come back and talk to them in person.
We met through working at Loom Communications together. When you think of a relationship that works well, it takes both sides to contribute evenly. I would say I wish I would have met James 20 years ago, but to have him in my life now, work-wise and personal, is something that I cherish every day. And I've already cried, and we're like 2 minutes into it, right?
I started Loom because the creative field is not diverse. It's white male dominant. I've endured more racial abuse at work than we have time to talk about on this podcast. And I started Loom so that I could do the work that I love, which is mass communications and strategy work. I started Loom so I could do my work in peace without being harassed. I wanted to create a fertile ground for other people who are in the creative field, who I know experienced that abuse as well. Not just racial abuse, but there's a lot of sexism in the creative field because most creative directors are male, and often women in the field are relegated to public relations or other things that don't have a creative title. So I wanted to create a safe space, and I wanted to do the work I love without being mistreated. And as it turns out, CARE has followed a very similar pattern, in that CARE exists so that BIPOC people interested in animal welfare can have that same safe space to do the work that they're passionate about. There's so many people in the field that love animals, that are passionate about animals, are passionate about people, that want to help sustain the human and animal bond, but they cannot do that work in a safe space within animal welfare. We were approached by Chaitanya Merrill from Spring Point. And Chaitanya had noticed over the years the work that we were doing in animal welfare, starting with the golf campaign, which Maddie's fund funded, thanks to Maddie. We did Adopters Welcome. We did Let's Fix It in Dallas. We did outdoor cats research. We did puppy mill research. All of these were like really, really incredible campaigns. But then we did Breaking Bias by request of Maddie's fund. And Jen and I went all over the country interviewing people who are traditionally not accepted as adopters. The goal was to expose animal welfare, shelter people, rescue people to all of these incredible people that are typically rejected from adoption.
And James came up with this idea that we were going to highlight the fact that people trying to adopt are being denied all over the place. So what we did was we did some research, and we basically figured out the top, I think, 7 reasons why people are denied adoption. And, in there it was people that didn't have fences, people that were renting their homes, people that were homeless, people that had families, people that were senior citizens, and people with children, small children specifically. So we set out to go across the country and interview traditionally denied people. It wasn't hard to do. We started out doing small Facebook campaigns, just asking people in very specific cities, large cities, that is, have you been denied pet adoption? And if you do, we just want to hear your story.
So we really wanted to show, number one, you can reject folks all you like. They are still going to end up with pets and they still love these pets. And so, we should be making space for these people as opposed to sending them back to puppy mills and sending them back to pet stores.
Not to surprise anybody, we got lots of hate mail. I think we were called racist. I don't even know how many times. And people, it aggravated people and it really kind of poked them.
Chaitanya Merrill, at the same time that was going on, and she is a woman of color herself, she was questioning her white female colleagues about how undiverse the field was. And they pointed her to me. And she essentially said, what if you came up with a proposal and myself and my colleagues at Spring Point would review the proposal? Would you consider creating an organization whose fundamental purpose was to bring diversity to the field?
There's a boiling point, and we're here today. 2020 is the year we fight back, and it's regardless of skin color. It's about your social status.
Maybe 2 or 3 months after we got the green light from Spring Point, the George Floyd eruption happened, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. And so, the whole country was shaken. And I think to a certain degree, animal welfare and animal welfare organizations were shaken, but I think some of them were also very keenly aware that if they made statements at this particular moment, that they would get a brand halo effect. And so CARE came to be in the midst of all of this racial awareness, racial opportunity of performative racial awareness all at the same time.
If you just care for them, then you're the perfect pet parent. This is my daughter. She's tattooed right here. Like, she's gonna live forever.
Shane, this was amazing. He's a Latino gay man. He is super special. He talked about his love for his dog, how he came across adopting the dog. They take the dog sailing and bike riding. I said, an awful a lot about the restrictions inside shelters and rescues. And he just had a lot of awareness about it. I said, how do you even know about that? Because most people don't know. And he goes, I volunteer at 2 shelters. And so he basically said that both of those shelters that he volunteered at, he knows he would have been denied adoption. And to me, that was kind of like the sticking moment where, or an aha moment where, what is going on in this industry that we're asking people to come and volunteer for free, but yet we're not going to give you a pet. We're worthy of you helping and cleaning and asking for money, but we actually don't want you to adopt one of our animals.
We did not want to step into animal welfare talking about bias that we felt personally. We wanted to measure that bias. So we partnered with Harvard's Project Implicit, and we asked them to tweak their well-known bias test for animal welfare. We distributed the surveys. We got 3,700 or so folks to take the survey, which is a great number. And it clearly showed that there was an enormous amount of bias in the field. The field is predominantly white, it is predominantly female, and the unconscious part of the test showed very clearly that folks in the field prefer to work with other white people. Their next preference down is Latin people or Latinx people. And the least favorite person to work with is poor, underserved person. And God forbid you're a combination of those 2 biases, strong biases being Black and underserved or Latino and underserved. And that to me is whatever anecdotal things that I believed or felt, that's water under the bridge now. It's a fact. The field is incredibly biased. So what we're doing now is a much deeper research into whether or not the bias in the field has an actual practical effect on policies and people.
And what happens is you have places that are creating toxic work environments or harmful environments, and people of color, especially young people, are running. They're leaving the industry. They're leaving animal welfare literally every day. Today, yesterday, they're either being pushed out, they're being fired, or they're quitting for their own mental health and sanity.
I applied for the job and I knew I wasn't qualified because all I had was a high school diploma, but when they looked up in the system, they saw that even before, when I was a teenager, I had just got my license. I would literally go in the neighborhood and pick up animals. So they hired me. And so when I got there, I was just cleaning kennels and stuff like that. And like I said, I started to get comfortable with my job. So I would open up and my ghetto-ness would show. But I'm being myself. I'm just being natural me, just happy because I came from nothing. I get to work my dream job. I am so happy and excited that I literally just relax and be me, but I was kind of punished for that.
So care centers are really about finding people doing the thing that they're incredibly passionate about and simply supporting them.
Our idea is not to go into a community and tell people what they should be doing and facilitate all of those jobs. Our idea is to ask what they need, help them in any way they want, if they want help, and then allow them to do it themselves.
We wanted to reach out to those folks and say, look, this is a pathway into an incredible industry, life work, passion, what have you. And by the way, we can help you do this work. And so we have people that are Awanuk at Red Lake. She is very focused on traditional rescue. Her focus is keeping animals alive, just simply alive and healthy through brutal cold winters. Tim Friedman is a natural born dog trainer and teacher of human beings. Bianca is kind of all over. She loves animals in general. She really wants to have an urban zoo in the middle of Atlanta. She loves all things creepy and crawly. And, you know, Sterling has his cats, and the list goes on. And if you can catch a kid in that moment of aha, when they know they're doing what they're supposed to do, or an adult for that matter, just support that. And as a father and a teacher and a business owner and a mentor, I think what I've learned about myself and other people is that the best way to get the best out of people is to support them in doing the things that they enjoy.
To create a safe space for the BIPOC community to be in animal welfare doesn't mean you start a DEI committee, and it doesn't mean you hire one Black person. It's a whole culture that's going to have to shift and change, and it's not going to happen overnight. So I really hope that places can do that carefully and thoughtfully, because otherwise, you know, I worry that for BIPOC people, their mental health and sanity is going to be the most important. And that might mean that they leave the industry altogether, which would be horrible because we'd be right where we were in the beginning, which is excluding people of color, which to me, or at the moment, are crucial into saving this movement and ensuring that animals get out of the rescues and shelters. Coming to terms with me being adopted and what that means. There's so many tie-ins. I think about adoption with animals similar to my own scenario. And so it maybe hurts a little more, but it's just when you know what it's like to be, unwanted and put into a room with a bunch of other unwanted children, dogs or cats. I think all I can think of personally is like, how do you get those kids out of that orphanage? How do you get those dogs and cats out? And it certainly isn't by making a 16-page adoption application. It's interesting to think that we have all of these humans in the universe that are looking to adopt an animal, and whether they have the same resources as somebody else, I think, shouldn't it start with that sentiment alone, right? Love. And if they don't have those things, shouldn't we be pouring millions of dollars into handing them with those resources? I mean, adoption is a solution, but I don't think it's the long-term solution. I think we're really focused on foster and adoption in both humans and animals, but prevention is really going to sustain the change. And I think that's going to cause humans to ask a lot of really difficult questions. And number one, what have we done wrong? And how can we fix that?
We have to get away from sheltering, and sheltering in its current sense is very physical. It's a building, it's a center, but the centers that we're talking about have to do with the center of mind, the way you think about your community, the way you think about your pets. I think if we just focus on helping people who are already helping their communities, we can build a lot less shelters, because shelters will never be able to meet the demand. If we can even just be pragmatic and use the infrastructure that we have on the ground, which are people, people that live in houses that to me are little micro shelters, make those little micro shelters better, and the animals won't end up in the actual shelters that we've built. I mean, Jen and I are meeting amazing, unbelievably courageous and generous BIPOC people literally every day. They are coming out of the woodwork, wanting to work with CARE, wanting to help CARE. And we are so grateful for their generosity and in awe of their carriage that it inspires us. And I think for us, making CARE bigger is not about forcing a white dominant culture to change, but we want to make a bigger house for these other folks to live in. And I think that's how we're really going to not so much change animal welfare, change the country, but give ownership and agency to these other folks who will, I think, shepherd the process on. Hi, Mary.
Hi, thanks so much for being here live and in person. It's just, I so appreciate how vulnerable you are, both of you, in sharing some of the deepest, most compassionate feelings about what we're doing and how we can do it. And I think what fills me with shame and hope at the same time is when I think of all that you have both endured professionally and personally, and yet you still have such a strong push to change, to help us change, to create a better environment for people who love their animals. And I really, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate that. But I love the stories of Shane and Chandler, and I know you've collected other stories as well. You want to talk a little bit more about them and maybe some of the highlights of some of those stories that you have managed to share with all of us?
So many. I mean, obviously, I've been doing this work since 2008, and I recall, this is before CARE, but I think it's still an amazing story, and there might be some folks logged on that know of it, but you know, back when we did the golf spay neuter event, we had a lot of free, vaccination events. And while at the event, we would encourage people to do spay and neuter. And it's just the turnouts. I mean, we would start the events early in the morning, 7 in the morning, sometimes 6:30 or 7 or 8 in the morning, whatever. And, there'd be 600 people in line, mostly people of color. And these are people that I think previous to the golf campaign and previous to Pets for Life, I think many in this field were saying, oh, those folks don't care about their pets. But when you see 650 people lined up in the rain or in the heat, it really contextualizes not just the emotional connectivity, but the need. And there's one story of a gentleman that wanted to bring a senior, I think it was in his 70s, that wanted to bring his German Shepherd to an event. And the dog, he didn't have a car. and the dog couldn't walk the whole way. So he carried the dog almost 2 miles to the event. And I mean, there are folks today that I know that were there at the event and they still remember. It's just one of many, many, many events. But I think the net is that unfortunately people of color in this country are criminalized and thought of as lower than others. And that perception encapsulates the way we think of them and their pets as well. And so we just want to sort of pull the curtain back on that fallacy.
I always go back to the story of Samantha. She was, we were actually at Expo, and we were finishing up the breaking bias concept, and I had to go to CVS to get a thumb drive. And as I was walking in, Samantha was there with a pit bull that had clearly been overbred at some point. So I remember going into the store and I was texting James furiously. I'm like, oh my God, there's a homeless person with a pit bull outside. Like, you've got to bring your cameras and hurry up. So
Exactly.
he ran down and, we asked her a bunch of questions, and I said, what would you tell people if you had something to say? And she said, I would say that people don't ask enough questions. She's like, no one's stopping to ask me, like, how did you get into this situation? Like, do you have a home lined up? She's like, when the dog's hot, we find shade. When the dog's hungry, I have food. Like, she opened her bag for me and she showed all the food and the water bottles she had. And like, to me, I knew she was feeding that dog first before she ever took care of herself. And she said she actually had taken the dog to the vet. And so it was really eye-opening for me. And I really hope that video kind of struck a chord with some people. But the fact that she was with that dog all day, 24 hours a day, and she did rescue that dog. Somebody dumped the dog under a bridge. So, and I think nobody's asking her that question.
So how do other people get involved if they want to get involved with CARE and volunteer, whether they're individuals or organizations?
Oh yeah, you can email us at equity@care, AWO.
Cool. James, you have said that success cannot be measured because the core issue of prejudice has not been fully measured. So how can you measure its opposite?
I said that. That sounds pretty smart, and it's true. I mean, you can't disprove a negative, and you certainly can't prove a positive, right? I mean, how can we possibly start really measuring our personal success when what we're trying to shift is Herculean? I would liken it to climbing a mountain that's so steep that you actually can't see the top. That's what we're dealing with. And I've said this from the very beginning, that I don't think the onus is on the condition of people of color. It can be owned by animal welfare. This is an enormous social problem that started in 1619 and before. It started in 1492, really. So I don't put all of that on animal welfare, but I think this industry, being an industry that claims to be humane, that claims to be loving, and of late claims to want to be equitable, that part you own. Like, once you say that you're humane, if you're limiting that to dogs and cats that you're willing to pick up off of the street, but it's okay if you run me over with your car, that's not humane. That's an extreme limited way to see humanity and what humane is. And so that we have to own. And so for me, there is a measurement inside of the field that the field has to own as grown-up boys and girls. Like, animal welfare has to own that. CARE success, I think we're dealing with such Herculean odds that our existence is successful, right? The fact that Tim Friedman, an African-American man in this field, has 501c3 status now, has his own organization, and he deserves it. We could walk away tomorrow and say that that's a certified success story. But I know that there are thousands of Tims out there And there might be 10,000 Tims out there. But again, the mountain is so steep that it's really hard to see where it plateaus at this point, because we really have just started.
So maybe this is a challenge for all of us to be thinking about impact in a different way than what we've done before, in just thinking in terms of, discrete data metrics. But Jennifer, I want to turn to you for a minute, because I want to thank you for just showing such a personal side of your own experiences as an adopted child. And as you talked more and more about what we need to do in animal welfare, I got the overwhelming sense of what you're really talking about is we need to create a culture of belonging. And if we don't do that, we are really going to, we'll never be able to create a space for people to feel like they belong. All people who love their animals.
Yeah, I mean, it is, it's not something I ever really partnered together until really started thinking about it. And James did some interview with me earlier, and I was like, oh yeah, like you really start to think that the adoption of humans and animals, it really is so similar. And you kind of, I went down this rabbit hole actually a week ago when we started talking about this, about how it's kind of turned into a business, and how because of that side, it's kind of dehumanized it all. And I think it allows some people to go down a different path instead of remembering what it's supposed to be about. I think in animal welfare, we actually, all of us, no matter what, really want the animals to find homes. But I think we can get distracted easily from, with shelters and businesses and salaries and everything. And I kind of am able to reset myself and think about being in an orphanage and knowing what that's like, and really remembering what is the goal. Our goal is to get all the kids out and to find homes. The goal is to get all the animals out and find homes. And if we can keep going back there and start there, then maybe our answers that haven't been working for 50, 20, 100 years will start to shift, and we'll actually find some solutions.
So you both have talked a lot about changing the 2%. Do you want to speak a little bit more about that, what that means, and what's, things that might be happening in the future?
This was honestly news to me until CARE started, that we had such a grotesque limit of African-American vets in the field. And it's only at 2%. And I should also say that the pay gap between male vets and female vets is almost $50,000, which is also equally outrageous. And so our goal to raise the 2% is to add more African-American vets to the field. And so last year we started a scholarship fund, and literally thanks to Maddie's, we were able to sort of jumpstart that scholarship fund last year and this year with, you guys have given so far $100,000 towards scholarships. Our goal is to help vet students of color, Black vet students, get through school, because African-American families are, I think the number today is somehow like 15 to 20 times the wealth in African-American families is 20 times less than their white counterparts. And so when you're talking about college and veterinary school, I mean, these costs are enormous. So not only are we facing a shortage of vets in general, but we are certainly suffering from a shortage of African-American vets. But this has been, like many things at CARE, something that Jen is working on a daily basis. So Jen, I don't know if you want to talk about the schools and where last year's money went to and what we want to do this year coming up.
Yeah, we paired it with Black History Month, actually. So we did host a series of talks. So we're doing the same this year. But we were able to raise $87,000. And in that process, it was very interesting, because with all the schools that we asked, after we had an advisory committee, a lot of the schools had to decline because they were not legally allowed to discriminate against white people. And so it was very interesting. So what was supposed to go out to 8 schools ended up going out to 4 schools. I had a lot of schools ask me to rewrite the wording for them, and it just didn't seem right. So we ended up going with 4 schools. We gave $21,000 to Tuskegee, UGA, LSU, and UTK. And it's great. We already started getting feedback from students. And what we were learning is that, something like $5,000, which is what each child's getting, is going to help them just stay in for the semester. And, we're in the middle of talking about how we can make this ongoing because, what might save a child this semester, he's going to need the same, or she, the next semester. And we purposely wrote in there that we didn't want it to be GPA based. And we also wanted to ensure that the money could go to whatever they needed. If they need to feed themselves, if they need to pay for gas or whatever. I think that's overlooked often when we're granting money and thinking we know what people should be spending their money on. So we're really excited about this year. We have the same thing going on. It's every Wednesday at 7. We have 4 different talks. They are all African-American speakers, all different topics, and we would love for everybody to join.
Thank you. Thank you both. Are there any last words or things you'd like to leave us with? I see a lot of the CARE folks that are in the audience, which is really great. It always is so awesome to see you all.
I just appreciate Maddie's support, and I really hope that people can just go back to the core of what we're all really wanting to do, which is really help animals. And, if you've made a mistake, it's okay. Like, own up to it and let's work to change those things. I think we all make mistakes, and I'm excited for the future. So we appreciate you.
Thanks. James, I think you have to talk about the Today Show.
So months ago, we filmed a music video. We actually found a local artist in Baltimore. And Jen and I saw him perform. He's African-American. He also hosts his own sort of political commentary show. I mean, DDM is just phenomenal, and he's brilliant. And when I met him, I just thought, God, this is the type of person that people outside of the culture don't understand, that the culture is full of these people. And so we sat down with him, we talked about animal welfare for 20 minutes or so, and 2 days later he had this amazing song written for us, and we decided to go down to Atlanta and film it amongst all of our crazy Atlanta friends. And it was, I'm honestly, Mary, I don't think that Jen and I have cried so many happy tears in so many days in a row. It was so much fun. It was so awesome to see all of these BIPOC people, and some not BIPOC, just super amazingly sweet people all together to produce this music video, to celebrate pet companionship. I mean, I think so often in this field, we dwell on a problem, right? Which is abuse, animal abuse and neglect, but that's such a small problem, right? It's not small in the context of what it is, right? I'm saying that is not the norm, but the norm that's happening all around the country, it's everywhere you can think of, including brown and black homes right now, is someone snuggling up with their dog or their cat or rabbit or whatever, but people love their pets. And so it's a great exposure, obviously, for CARE, but I think it's great exposure for BIPOC love, BIPOC talent, BIPOC commitment to this field. And most BIPOCs, I would say, across the country probably don't know that animal welfare even exists. So there's this enormous pool of people who I think the field needs and should be looking for. We're not looking broadly enough for help. We're not looking broadly enough for volunteers or donors. And honestly, we're not looking for genius in the right places. We have this very narrow vision of where genius comes from. And I think we're missing out. The animals are missing out. I don't know, the video is really about all of that there's all these beautiful, compassionate, funny, loving people out there that also love pets.
Hey, I also want to put in a plug for February 17th. There is a webinar, Amended American History, with James, Johnny Jenkins, and Moeni Rudd of CARE. They're going to talk about the importance of intentional removal of key facts. as well as the power in knowing a complete history of America. So I'd urge you all to sign up for it. It should be great. It's in the middle of Black History Month. Don't get me started on why they picked the shortest month of the year for this. So we may have to just add another week or two to February to get all of this stuff in. Anyway,
like that.
James and Jen, thank you both so much. Thank you to CARE. Thanks to all of you who are with us today. Don't forget that we can continue the conversation on Maddie's Pet Forum. Again, Happy New Year, everyone. What a great way to start 2022.
Thank you, Mary.
you.
You've been awesome. Thank you.